Welcome to our virtual issue briefing today. My name is Sarah Harrison. I am the Vice President of Philanthropic Services here at the Denver Foundation, and it's a pleasure to have you here. This is our service to donors. One of the ways we connect with you to mobilize your philanthropy in times of need and in all times. We're very grateful for you. I want to start off by first saying that we hope you and your loved ones are safe and well in this unusual time. Thank you for making time for this today. We have gratitude for your partnership, for your long-term support of the community, and for stepping up in this unprecedented time. When we think about the way the Denver Foundation operates, the simplest description of our business functions is to raise money, to invest money, and to give money away. And we've been actively involved in doing that, if remotely from our homes, to keep business as usual going. We've also done a lot of deep, nuanced work to help our community partners get through this time and to help you help others. So let's get started. Please meet my colleague, Alyssa Kopf, who's our Vice President of Strategic Services, and she's going to serve as our moderator today. Alyssa?
Thanks, Sarah. Well, welcome everyone. If we had a hashtag for this session, it would be Grace for Glitches. This is our first virtual issue briefing, so bear with us if we have any hiccups along the way. As you may have noticed, we had you join with your microphones muted, and we're going to keep it that way through about a 30-minute presentation. We have 3 panelists speaking, and after that, we'll be opening up to Q&A. I want to let you know that we are recording this session. So if you would not like to share your video, you're welcome to turn that off. All you do is take your mouse to the bottom left corner of your screen and it says stop video. That's your option to do that. At the same time, we'll circle back when it's time for Q&A about turning your microphone on and off. While we're going, we welcome you to enter questions in our chat. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's an orange chat button with a conversation bubble like a cartoon. And so while we're going, you can enter a question there for us, and we'll tee it up to when we get to the end. We'll also be opening up for oral questions as well. I think that's it. Also, you can let us know in chat if you're having any trouble with the video, and we'll do our best to troubleshoot. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our President and CEO, Javier Alberto Soto.
And thank you all so much for joining us and for your continued support of the Denver Foundation and of this great community. I'd like to echo what Sarah said at the outset, wishing all of you health and safety during this very scary time. I'd also like to encourage, urge, beg all of you to please take the guidance very seriously. Frankly, I would double the guidance if I were you. I don't think that we fully understand just how powerful this virus is and just how easily it is transmitted. So I implore you to please take all of this very seriously, double the social distance guidelines to 12 feet, wear 2 bandanas around your face, and just please go out only when absolutely necessary. We will get through this. But we will get through it quicker and with a lot less hurt if we all take the guidance of our governor, our mayor, and the CDC incredibly seriously. So I'd like to start today by just talking about community foundations in general and their role in moments of crisis. As most of you, I'm sure, know, I was at the Miami Foundation prior to moving to Denver to take on this role 6 months ago. And while I have a lot of experience in hurricane relief efforts, this is certainly my first pandemic. I think that's true for most, if not all of us. But frankly, the underlying strengths of community foundation that allow us to really respond in a moment like this effectively are really on full display during any kind of crisis mobilization. Our deep expertise in community, knowing who the folks are in a community who are doing the most impactful work and getting resources and assistance to those who most need it. the speed at which we're able to deploy resources, to aggregate resources, and again, identify those problem solvers in community. We've overhauled our entire operation in the last 4 weeks, and I'm so incredibly proud of the entire team and our board for their tremendous support that has allowed us to move into a virtual world from one day to the other and push out now over $5 million in COVID-related grants into this community, again, over just the past 4 weeks. The other underlying characteristic that is on full display during a time of crisis, whether it's a natural disaster or a pandemic, is the incredible generosity of people and their instinct to do all they can to help their neighbors, to help their community survive the crisis. And that $5 million I just cited is direct evidence of that. All of you, all of our supporters, donors, partners have stepped up in major ways. And the Denver Foundation has also tried to be a partner to other organizations throughout the state who are fighting this battle beyond just Metro Denver. So other foundations in our local area and throughout the state have banded together. We've worked very closely with our governor and the Help Colorado Now Relief Fund. So this entire state is really pulling together in a really spectacular way. I think we should all be incredibly proud of that. And specifically at the Denver Foundation, we have deployed our Critical Needs Fund and put it to work in this crisis. And it is the main vehicle by which we are deploying resources into the Metro Denver area to assist those most vulnerable to the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. And before I turn it to Sarah, I just want to say, we've had a lot of conversation internally about what it means to be vulnerable in this new era. We have a definition that we have been working off of for a very long time. And those are certainly the populations that initially came into very sharp focus for us when we started to mobilize to address this crisis. Folks who are unsheltered, folks who are undocumented, those who might be at risk for domestic violence. But when you look at a pandemic that targets the elderly, perhaps in a more vicious way than those who are younger, you think about the vulnerability of the elderly. When you look at an online world where students are asked to participate in virtual learning, you think about those students who perhaps have a neurodivergent wiring that makes that a little less simple than for neurotypical students. You think about disabled folks who require, in order to live their lives, in-home caretakers to come into their homes in an era where that's not really allowed. So there are increasing numbers of vulnerable people in our community, in our state, and frankly, throughout our nation and world. And we're trying to meet as many of those needs as possible. Obviously, we can't do it alone. And so again, to reiterate my deep appreciation and thanks for your support, particularly through the Critical Needs Fund. And to give you a little more background and information on the Critical Needs Fund, I will turn it over now back to Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. Yes, so the generosity in our community is definitely strong and definitely growing. And we're deeply grateful for your continued interest, response, support, and partnership with us. I want to give you a few indicators of how our fund holders and other donors have responded in the recent weeks. Donor advised fund holders, always generous, usually distributing about 16% of the value of their funds every year, have almost tripled grant recommendations for this time of year. In spring, typically we see 40, 45 grants recommendations a week. It's climbed to just under 200 a week. As Javier said, $5 million, we've sent out $5 million in the last few weeks in response. And as of last week, that was not quite 4 million. So you can see the generosity is growing. Our fund holders have sent out money to over 100 nonprofits in Metro Denver and across Colorado, revealing a deep investment in trusted nonprofits as they manage their normal operations and address COVID. Included in that amount, as Javier mentioned, are the dozens of grants we've received from our fund holders for the Critical Needs Fund. This is our quick action fund for responding to emergent basic needs situations. And you might recall that we established that fund in 2006, and we have activated it several times to great intent and activity over the last 10 years. Specifically in 2008 through 2011, in the hunger crisis of the Great Recession, as well as in 2013 through 2015, where we worked to address the growing issue of unaccompanied women experiencing homelessness in our community. The Critical Needs Fund is tailor-made for situations like COVID, and that's because it offers a way to mobilize philanthropy immediately, your generosity and our expertise. We find that when people want to help in a situation like this, they sometimes don't know what to do. They may engage with their nonprofits where they're already closed, but then they want to do something where they don't know where to help. And the Critical Needs Fund offers a way to make a tax-deductible contribution because we're a public charity, and we accept gifts of all types and amounts. We get that money in, and our grant-making experts, community experts in our programs department then vet and deploy grants rapidly to local nonprofits serving, as Javier mentioned, those most vulnerable. So far in this urgent work, we've received gifts ranging from $25 to $1 million into the Critical Needs Fund. People are giving generously online via the website, making donor advised grants, and also sending checks in the mail, which, by the way, we do collect every few days. We've also had great inquiries about different ways to give. For example, using your qualified charitable distributions, QCDs, from individual retirement accounts. That's a great approach. And I know we have some of our financial and legal advisor partners on the phone with us today. It's great for you to join us. And these are the kinds of things we know you help your clients think through. Also, I'd like to mention there were great giving incentives in the recent CARES Act. Just three to highlight quickly. The deductible limit on adjusted gross income goes for individual filers from 60 to 100%. For corporate tax filers, that deductible limit has gone up from 10% to 25%. And then all filers, regardless of itemization, are allowed to deduct $300 for public charities above the line for 2020. Now, one of the things we know from these CARES Act changes is that they are temporary, they're for 2020 alone, and they are focused on getting money out the door to service providers. These are not gifts that will go into donor advised funds that will qualify. So the Critical Needs Fund qualifies, charities operating programs and services will qualify. The idea, again, is to mobilize philanthropy quickly. So now that you know we're raising money for quick distribution, it's important to know what that distribution looks like and what our investments in the local community look like, thanks to generosity from you. So my colleague, Desa West, our Vice President of Community Impact, will give us an update on our robust grant making. Desa?
Hi, everyone. Happy to see all of you here and really excited to talk about the work that we've been doing through the Critical Needs Fund, which has been extremely powerful as a tool for us over this period of time, as we've had to adjust to this new landscape and really think about what it means. And for us, it means that we really had to do things a little differently. We had to move really quickly. We had to connect with nonprofits that were really at the epicenter of major issues that were being identified by our other community partners. We were looking for organizations that were serving as service providers and also thinking about policy. And as Javier described, really thinking about an expanded definition of most vulnerable, which has always been something that's been at the core of the Denver Foundation's work, but has become a broader definition as we have delved into this COVID reality. So how did we go about thinking about the Critical Needs Fund and how to use it? Well, our directors of our various objective areas within the programs department did some really strategic thinking about what organizations were functioning at the center of a whole variety of different service providers. And they reached out to those organizations to find out from them whether they had conducted a needs assessment, and so many of them had. They had surveyed their partners, they had brought people together in virtual convenings, and they had a real finger on the pulse of what people were saying were needs of the most vulnerable in the community. Those providers also were willing to serve in a role in which they were putting dollars out into the broader community, into the service providers on the ground, and were willing to be in a position where they were interacting with each other and with other umbrella providers to connect, so that we weren't seeing housing insecurity and food insecurity in two different places. We were seeing them connected to each other, because we know that people are whole people with a whole range of issues and needs. So what have we done with the Critical Needs Fund so far? We've put out $580,000. $100,000 of that went to the Colorado COVID Relief Fund, which is a partnership that Javier mentioned amongst a whole variety of foundations, banks, and other generous individuals to provide resources across the state. But we also provided specific resources to those umbrella organizations that were serving in the center of the work that we were seeing across the state. And those are groups like the Colorado Blueprint to End Hunger and Feeding Colorado, who has a reach of 1,500 organizations ranging from food pantries to daycare centers to residential treatment centers, making sure that food is getting out into the hands of people that need it. The Metro Denver Homeless Initiative with a Housing Security Flex Fund, which provides rental assistance, which provides assistance in application fees and first and last month's rent and housing counseling. Organizations that you might not think of, like Violence Free Colorado, which works with 60 providers across the state to support people experiencing domestic violence, which with a stay-at-home order is something that is actually on the rise. So lots of different providers who are working with people on the ground, who are doing really important and critical work that's being identified. But we're not only deploying the Critical Needs Fund, we're also looking at other resources of the Denver Foundation. So at the same time that this was happening, we had a regular grant round through our community grants program. So organizations applied to us not knowing that COVID was right on the horizon. And our team has sprung into action, took a look at those grant proposals, pulled out those organizations that were providing services that had a relationship to COVID. And as a result, 42 organizations totaling $1 million are getting resources 2 months earlier than they would otherwise be getting them, because we're really focused on springing into action and providing those supports and services. In addition, we are now in our next phase of deploying the Critical Needs Fund. We're doing that through an open application process. We have $500,000 that we'll be putting out. Those resources are focused in several areas, including basic human needs, economic opportunity, education, leadership and equity, and behavioral health. Applications close on April 22nd. So if you have a nonprofit that you think is providing really excellent service, we want to hear from them. It's really important for us to have as many organizations come in the door so that we are able to really take a look at who is providing the broadest range of services across the metro area and statewide. And just to summarize, we're really looking to move quickly, we're looking to move strategically, and we're looking to move differently than we've ever moved before. This is a time of crisis, and it's a time for us to step up, and to step up in partnership with our donors in deploying this really important resource out into the community. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Javier.
Thanks very much, Jaysa. So I'm seeing some questions on the chat. Maybe Alyssa, we can go there. There's one about the fund that Desa just referenced as well, that the governor's office has taken the lead on. So our involvement with that, I was asked to serve on the leadership committee. So I have been participating from the beginning of the process as a member of that committee. We also contributed $100,000 from the Denver Foundation, not from Critical Needs Fund, but from other sources to the governor's fund. And then myself and one of our program directors, LaDon Sullivan, are serving on grant review committees as well. So we're deeply involved with the governor's relief effort that, again, has a statewide footprint. There are a number of foundations throughout the state who are similarly participating, and we're in close contact, particularly through Philanthropy Colorado, with all of those funders throughout the state. And then less formally with all of our local foundations who we've always worked very closely with and are now in pretty regular contact, including the Colorado Health Foundation, Rose Community Foundation, Community First, Boulder Community Foundation. So we have been in very close contact with all of these folks. And frankly, it's one of those things that I immediately noticed about this area when I moved here 6 months ago, is a deep, deep spirit of collaboration that exists here in the philanthropic community. And I think that is shining brightly during this crisis.
To wrap us up, I'd like to go to Sarah Harrison to talk to you a little bit more about the role of philanthropy responding to COVID.
Thank you, Alyssa, and thanks everybody again for being here. The greatest thing we ever do is something we do for others. And when we do things for others whom we'll never meet, it's even more important. That's what building community is about. And that's what partnering together is about. And we think that's what being part of a community foundation is about, doing things for others, working together. So today's webinar is one way that we try to add value to your experience as philanthropists and as connected community members. And we hope that it's galvanized you even more to engage with your favorite nonprofits and with the local community, and not just for COVID, but certainly for COVID and beyond. We'd really like to ask you to dig deeper and engage with us. Make a personal gift to the Critical Needs Fund. You can give personally, online, or through a donor-advised grant. Everything you give is carefully sent out in the process that Desa has described with our grant-making experts in the programs department. This is high-impact strategic giving, to Bill's point. We also hope you'll share our information about the Critical Needs Fund and the work we're doing with your networks. Again, sometimes people want to help and they don't know how. And this is something that's available to people at all levels. Gifts so far, again, from $25 to $1 million. Remember, engage your nonprofits. If they're operating in the areas Desa cited, basic human needs, economic opportunity, education, leadership and equity, and behavioral health, they should look at our critical needs application, which is posted online. And please continue to take care of yourselves. We need you in the community. We hope you're healthy and safe, and we look forward to partnering with you again. Thank you.
Great, thank you everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. The last question we got was, are you planning continued scheduling Zoom meetings like this? And due to the participation and your great questions, I think the answer is yes. But there's a lot of ways for you to stay connected to us. Don't forget about the Denver Foundation's COVID page. And also, please expect a ways to engage email to be sent in the next few days. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. And just to echo, please be careful. Please protect yourself and be safe. And even though we are apart, it's moments like this that we really do get to work together. So thank you.